Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use, tips a balance in favor of fair use. Scythe Tleppo by Nathan Rich, Chapter 4. Maddie and I were in the dorm when I spotted a cigarette under the large wooden cable spool we used as a table. When I was 2 years old, my mother let me try smoking. I wanted to try it again. We found some matches nearby and smoked half of the cigarette before stamping it out. Lightheaded and dizzy, no one else was around, so we were sure we had gotten away with it. But the next muster, there was a KR on us. Can you imagine living like this? Maddie and Nathan were smoking in the dormitory. I smelled the smoke on them. While I sat back a little bit on the couch. Playing with fire, he said. 3 paddles. And again, I'm going to give you guys a trigger alert because I'm not sure what's coming. I cried out, playing with fire. We weren't. Playing with fire, Wally yelled. See how they manipulate? Don't make it worse for yourself. We can do 5 paddles. Okay, I said while my eyes wandered and then locked on Lafayette's picture, smiling down on the room. Scott, the Board of Justice. He requested, holding his right hand out. By the way, you guys, this is a sign of a sadist. You're first, Nathan. Come on. The room was silent. Scott walked to the wall and pulled down the paddle. Come on, Wally said, pointing at the ottoman before him. Murphy added, bend over, dude. I bent over the ottoman and reached my arms out to its corners. The room was still quiet when Wally got up from the couch, by then holding the paddle. All right, Nathan. I want you to look at the picture of LRH. Looking at him, he said. I raised my head and locked eyes again with Lafayette's picture. You are a liability to this group, and you're being out ethics. That's at hive mind. He added as he walked behind me. Is this really happening? Gotta get some water. How do they think they can get away with this? I'm going to tell my mom. You need to be penalized, and you need to make amends. Wally added, your penalty is 3 paddles, carried out immediately. If you move, Scott is going to hold you down, and you aren't going to like that. Do you understand? I'm trying not to interject, you guys, but it just upsets me. They can't even fight fair. I nodded. I don't have any words left. I don't like doing this, you know that, he said. What does he mean he doesn't like? Thwack! The sound waves pummeled my eardrums, and I found myself suddenly standing up straight, holding my butt with my hands. Scott, Wally barked. Scott silently sprung up from the seated position. If you're not going to stay still, Wally warned me. I bent over and looked up at Lafayette. They want me to cry, but I'm not going to. I only have 2 more to go. Thwack! The force pushed my chest first onto the ottoman. God damn, how did I get here? I got back into position. My behind was throbbing. How much more Scientology do I have to do for my mom? Thwack! I was back on the ottoman. My butt was numb, but my coccyx was in major pain. I looked back at Wally. There were tears in my eyes, but I didn't cry. Well, all right, he said. I don't want to hear anything more about you playing with fire, he added. I don't like doing this. You know that, Scott. That sent mine death. Yeah, Scott quietly concurred. I crumpled into the couch, holding my butt with both hands. You're going to need to do your liability condition, too, son. He swore he was still in the military. I knew what that meant, a written apology to the group, followed by asking for forgiveness. I'm not your son. I didn't say anything. You're a bad child. Most months my mother visited me, and a few days before, she did. Punishment for KRs became more relaxed, and staff wrote commendations on me. Preparation for a parent's visit was a ritual. They don't want him to see the bruises. The first time she arrived, I took her around to check out the place. I was thrilled to finally see her, but Wally was tagging along with us. That's because he's handling. I told her I want to go home, but she wasn't interested. Does that sound like a mother that cares? You could probably leave next month. Nay, if your ethics are in. This was her new catchphrase, it turned out. 2 weeks after I played with fire, she returned. We sat at Wally's desk while we spoke. Mom, I want to go home, I pleaded. Well, Nay, I need to talk to Wally about that, she replied. She just handed him over. Makes me sick. Mom, they hit me. They hit me with a paddle. I want to go home. I'm sorry. My eyes were watering as I tried to maintain. Before she could respond, Wally chimed in. He got the Board of Justice for playing with fire. No, I wasn't playing with fire. I just smoked a cigarette, I countered, looking at him. I looked at my mom with beggar's eyes. Go on, let me talk to Wally, she said. I lowered my head and walked down the hall. I entered the dorm, but sat on my bed rather than cleaned. I was nervous but confident. I knew I was leaving. There's no way she will leave me here now. No way. A few minutes later, my mother came into the dorm. Nay, she said, sitting down next to me. You need to get your ethics in. I read the KRs from last week. You're being a downstat, playing with fire. Mom, I wasn't. Nay. I don't want to hear it. I've read the KRs, okay? Just stop it. I didn't want her to leave me again. My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to scream. She quickly stood up and said, get your ethics in, Nay. If your ethics are in next month, then I'll come back. Great mom, isn't it? She walked out of my room and out of my life again. My protest had backfired. My anger proved I was a downtone. I was a negative person. I was out ethics. Wish I knew how old he was right here. I didn't see or hear from her again for 2 months. She must have been living life. As soon as my mom left, I was put in lockdown. Wally and the staff let me know they were still in charge, and I wasn't going anywhere. Winter had come to Palmdale and to my mind. The trough was an aluminum, human-sized tub for horses to drink from. Year-round, and by this time the winter was frozen over with 4 inches of ice. I never knew horse troughs existed before that winter. When they took me by my ankles and wrists and threw me in, I thought the ice would cut my ankles and wrists and threw me in. I thought the ice would cut to my ribs. I thought of my head hitting the metal rim. They had done this before, though. They knew how to avoid permanent marks. The icy, frigid water made way for my body, rubbing at my skin like a sandblaster. I grasped for air as I came up, unsure if I was crying, as my head was covered in water and ice. The glassy chunks were as large as my fists or arms. I was humiliated and defeated. They had put me in my place. I looked up to see if they would let me out. Scientology was their master, and with it they were my masters. I was master of nothing. I have to survive for my mother. What can I do but show her I'm a good boy? I need to get my ethics in. Time slowed to a crawl as I adjusted to living in a dark storm. Most months my mother came to visit. Sometimes she didn't. My life continued in this way for what seemed an eternity. I dodged KRs the best I could, mostly by staying under the older kids' radars. I tried to be good and to stay out of trouble, but my efforts weren't enough to save me. He's one of the younger kids, too. I guess the FBI is okay with all that. Buddy, the ranch's mule, was unpopular with the girls. They thought he was a pervert. The two blonde sisters, Sayadina and Dharmafree, sounds Indian to me, were his favorites. Saya had a reputation as a crazy chick, while Dharma was level-headed and kind. One day, just before muster, Saya came out of the bathroom, holding a toilet paper roll. She screamed, "Buddy, you sick fuck." Wally always seemed ready for things like this. He sprung up from his couch, ready to pounce. That's what Perry does. "What did he do now?" Wally bellowed. "He came in the toilet paper roll. He was jerking off," Saya reported. The room was silent. I wondered what she meant. Mind you, he's young. I'll try to code the rest of it. I didn't know that was coming. From now on, you guys will know what I'm talking about. She held out the toilet paper roll filled with tissues and blank blank. I had some idea of what blank blank was, but not what blank blank was. Which is very normal for young boys, by the way. Was he putting his blank in that blank? Maddie and I had heard of blank, but didn't get what it was. Something about pulling a blank until blank blank. We didn't know it was a blank. Buddy was sentenced to a week of choral duty. Can you imagine how embarrassing this was? Cleaning the horse corrals. No communication allowed and limited food. Like punishing this young boy for what all young boys do. It's horrible. That night in the dorm, Maddie and I made jokes about blank. We called each other blank blank, but didn't attempt it. We had our little kid world inside of the ranch world. We tried to have fun in any way possible. We weren't perfect by any means, but salvageable, I think. We hadn't done anything wrong. Still, we should have known better. The next day at muster, we all sat bored but nervous at the same time. That was the usual mood at the ranch. Everything was boring until it suddenly wasn't. Wally read a KR to himself. Isn't that great? Without sharing its contents. Occasionally, Wally silently read KRs, followed by a sentence for Buddy and the terse remark. He knows what it's for. This time, though, it wasn't about Buddy. Wally doubled back and read it aloud. Nathan and Maddie were blank blank last night in bed. This is true. That was a lie. That's not what they were doing. We weren't. We were just joking around. We tried to fight. Can you imagine? This is sick. I'm sorry, you guys, I interrupted. It makes me so sick. One day I would have liked with that Wally dude. One day. Out 2D. Your penalty is 200 Suzy Q's. Wally commanded. But we didn't. But we didn't. In horseshit, he added. Why that MNFer never went to prison? I'm sorry, guys. I'm messing it all up. Out 2D means something that is out ethics on the second dynamic, sex and family. Oh, ha. One of the kids laughed. What does he mean? I felt numb and nervous at the same time. How could blank be out 2D dynamic? Touching oneself. What does that have to do with sex and family? I didn't understand what he meant. Buddy, get a fresh pair of manure ready. Fresh pile of manure ready. Maddie, Nathan, you'd better strip down now, Wally ordered. This is really sick. David Miscavige was fine with it. Rinder was fine with it. Debbie Cook was fine with it. The parents were fine with this. Everybody acting dumb. We removed all but our underwear in the middle of muster. The whole group made its way out to an empty corral, where by then Buddy had a large pile of the freshest horse manure he could shovel in. And Buddy was, remember, he was the kid with the brain injury. The brain injury that happened on Scientology time that nobody ever got convicted for. Yeah. I moved my bare feet lightly on the hard frozen ground as the teens and staff surrounded the corral. Buddy walked back and forth between corrals, stacking more manure with his flat-head shovel. His face had the same expression as always, a blank intensity, as if he knew something serious was happening, but couldn't quite grasp what it was. All right, that's enough, Buddy, a security guard named Mike Shower said. Guys, get in. I can see my breath. It's freezing. Steam billowed off the wet manure in the frigid air. For a moment, everyone was silent. Scott said sternly, we're going to be out of here until you get it done. So that's mass punishment for something he didn't even do. Maddie looked at me, then dropped to the ground and got to work. He had been there longer than me and had learned not to resist. I thought if I refused to do mine, they'd physically force me. I squatted and jumped to the push-up position. My right hand slid, and my chest hit the ground, but it didn't hurt. The hot manure had already melted the ice below it. The ground was a slippery mess. I felt nauseous and mortified. It's to humiliate. To the nth degree, that's why. Come on, someone shouted out. I got back up, planted my limbs into the wet ground, and found enough stability to continue. Maddie had less trouble than I did, but we both counted aloud for our masters. Susie Q's are much harder than push-ups, so the process took a while. While I got to 100, I looked at Maddie and then myself. The filth had covered our bodies. Black and green, deep green. I heard Saya laughing, but I didn't look to see if the laughter was directed at us. I didn't want to know. Halfway, come on, let's go. Get to work, Scott said. I lowered my face and body back into the slime. How old was this Scott scumbag? We finished out 200 military-style jump squat push-ups in the pile of wet, steaming horse manure. As we were ordered, they showed us we were manure. After it was all over, Scott walked the two of us to outdoor shower stalls while everyone else went back to the house. See, it wasn't that bad, he stated. That's the gaslighting. Mortified and embarrassed, I hated everyone. Yeah, just go away, I hate you. I rubbed the manure off my skin under the cold shower as a distant blank numbness took root in my mind. That's trauma. It's disassociation. I wanted my life to go back before I came to the ranch, but I didn't know how it could. Isn't it great that his mom just dropped him off like a piece of property? I skipped several showers intentionally. Oh, wait. Maybe it was a painful memory of being showered at Stan's daycare center, or my preference for a soft bath, but I didn't like to shower. Unfortunately for me, and there might be more behind that, only girls took baths at the ranch. The boys took outdoor showers. I skipped several showers intentionally. I often stood next to the shower and pretended to use it. Eventually I became dirty, and since I was already a dirty kid, it wasn't long before others noticed my poor hygiene. It's like the only thing he can control. At another muster a month later, Wally read a KR to everyone, but didn't bother to finish it. Nathan is extremely dirty. Yes, he is. He immediately agreed. Scott, GI shower. Scott led the whole group of kids and staff out to the shower area. Everyone gathered around the wooden fence to watch. Strip down, you're going to take a shower now, Scott said to me. Wow, that's awful. I was embarrassed and shy. I don't want the girls to see me in my underwear again. Scott began stripping me down until I took over. He took out a wooden-handled metal bristled fence brush from his pocket. No, I whimpered. He grabbed my left arm with one hand and held the brush to it with the other. He focused his attention on my arm as he made a sawing motion with the brush. The steel bristles scratched my skin, but he was careful not to break the surface. Yeah, because then there's evidence. Not like Hemet police would care. Right? Hemet police have no idea this is going on. I tried not to cry because I knew the girls were watching. They had to. Do they want to watch? I wondered in a moment of horror. Has he done this before? I tried not to think about anything anymore. Numbness, escape. When he was done scrubbing me down, I was scratched, cold, wet, and clean. He let me know it was going to happen again if I didn't shower from then on. I was sure to do so. The numbness growing in my mind, latched onto the loneliness and sorrow already present, and a new dark energy was born. On some album cover or in some song, I had heard the name Prometheus. The mysterious sounding name resonated with me immediately. Whatever the name meant, whoever he was, I was him. I became Prometheus, something deeper than the world of others. Somewhere inside was the real me. My psyche, my ego became Prometheus. This is splitting. This is what they call splitting, alters. I don't know if he's got alters, but this is disassociation. I was deep inside myself, learning to hide behind a false version of me. That's how it began. That is the origin of Scythe Tleppo. Oh, wow. On one otherwise uneventful day, my mother called. Wally sat at his desk, pulled the phone off the hook, and looked at me intensely. Don't say anything stupid. He toggled the hold button and handed me the phone. Hello, Mom, I mumbled. She was crying. Nay. Marty dropped his body, she muttered. My grandfather was dead. I was shocked. Marty? What happened? What will happen now? What's going on? Yeah, and he was one of the only ones that really cared for him. What? He did what? He dropped his body. He's gone. She was destroyed. I tried to ascertain if his death meant I could leave the ranch. I felt a confusing mix of emotions, including guilt for asking about leaving. She told me she was taking me out of the ranch. I knew my life was going to change, so I was excited for myself. I knew my grandfather died, so I was sad and upset. I was overcome with sorrow, relief, and guilt. but they were all masked with numbness. After 8 months and 11 days at the ranch, my mother took me back. I knew my life was going to be different. Even though I lost my grandfather, it was going to be a better life. It had to be. I felt like anything would be a better life than what I had experienced in Palmdale.